Okay, so it's been a while since I've done any ice hockey content that isn't about the NHL, but we're looking at the EIHL in this video, and we're discussing making net guards mandatory. Now, obviously, we've had the tragic passing a week ago of Adam Johnson in a game for the Nottingham Panthers against the Sheffield Steelers, and that incident, the discussion around that's become quite toxic online, and there's obviously the ongoing coroners and police investigation. That happens anytime there is a death. Any time in the UK, it's pretty common practice. If there's a death of any nature, whether it's explained, unexplained, that the police will investigate, as will the coroner. Now, the coroner has stated, that'd be the medical examiner for North Americans, has stated that they strongly urge ice hockey nationwide. That includes elite league level, and then the lower levels like the Scottish National League and the National Ice Hockey League of England and Wales, which will be the English Ice Hockey Association governing that net guards should become mandatory. Now, the EIHA has made them mandatory immediately. The Elite League is waiting until next season. Now, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is it being reactionary, not reactionary enough, knee-jerk? There's all that discussion going on social media. But what is very interesting, normally it's the NHL that leads the way with rule changes or equipment changes, and other leagues tend to follow suit because the NHL is the barometer of the sport. What is very interesting is the NHL has said they're not making them compulsory. They highly recommend. It's the same with the IIHF, the governing body. They highly recommend, and this is what the Elite League has said. Until next season in 2024-2025, they highly recommend that players use them, but it's not compulsory. So I find that very interesting. Now, another thing you have to factor in is the cost. Ice hockey, or hockey for North Americans, is a very expensive sport. To play, the equipment costs a lot of money. So who's going to foot the bill for all this extra equipment? The NIHL, a lot of the players are part-time. They may be paid for match appearances, but they also have other jobs, and equipment isn't cheap. So who's going to foot the bill? Is it going to be the English Ice Hockey Association, which doesn't have a lot of money? Are the team sponsors and equipment sponsors like Warrior, Bauer, for example, and CCM, are they going to step up, for example, and discount the value of the equipment for the players? And what happens when the Elite League decides to make this a mandatory rule next year? Will the teams be covering the cost? Will the league cover the cost? Will the players have to cover the cost because of insurance? We've seen this debate before with helmets, with visors on helmets. When visors were introduced, we've seen various safety features brought in over time, and every time a safety feature is brought in, initially there's a lot of fans who go, the game's going soft. The game is going soft. Now, the EIHL and the leagues below are known as pretty tough leagues by ice hockey standards because there's a lot of fighting majors and there's a lot more hitting in the game. It's like a throwback to what the NHL was in the 80s and 90s. It's a brutal game over here in the UK, but players do like to drop the gloves. You will see bench clearing brawls. It's rough and ready. I don't think bringing in net guards in is going to completely change how the game is played. It's still going to be the same brutal game that we love because we love the contact, we like the physicality, we like the gladiatorial combat. But I'm surprised it's taken 34 years from the incident involving Clint Malarchuk playing for the Buffalo Sabres, where he had his throat cut in a freak accident in early 1989. There's been a few other incidents between then and now, and I know one player who almost had his throat cut last year. It was very, very lucky. It was a very, very minor graze because of the way his body fell and the way the opposition player fell. Very, very lucky. He missed a few games for that. I'm not going to name the player, but I've seen the photos. He was exceptionally lucky that he's still here. But because it's not someone who's played in the NHL or a North American player, so Adam Johnson being American and having played in the NHL, it didn't really make the news headlines. Because an ex-NHL player who has played for one of the most successful teams in the last 20 years in the Pittsburgh Penguins, Adam Johnson, who is now plying his trade in Europe at that time, has tragically passed. It has made a lot of news headlines over in North America. If that was a British player, I don't think it has the same impact as it has had. But I am surprised that the EIHL is waiting another for the rest of this season and post-season to be played out, until the start of next season, at the end of the summer next year, at the end of August, beginning of September, to bring in this rule change, considering that the leagues below, where there are players on two-way contracts, developmental players, who will be forced to wear the neck guards in the NIHL. So we could have, for example, a Bees player, my local team. They have a two-way contract system with the Coventry Blaze in the Elite League. When they're down with the NIHL team, they have to wear the neck guard. But when they go up to play in the Elite League for the Coventry Blaze, they don't. So will the players continue to wear the neck guards in the EIHL if they're on a two-way contract? That's an interesting one. Will other leagues across Europe take note and decide, hang on a second, we should do this? Because there is a cost element attached. And then there's the insurance side of things. Players need player insurance. And some insurers will say, we are not going to insure you unless you wear this recommended piece of safety kit. We're not going to insure you, or the premium is going to be so high the player cannot afford it, or the team cannot afford it. So it's going to be interesting. Have the EIHA as the governing body of the leagues below the Elite League in England and Wales, have they been too reactionary, or is it the right decision? Why has it taken 34 years since Clint Malarchuk nearly lost his life playing for the Buffalo Sabres in a different but similar incident with a nasty injury to his neck and his jugular, for this to gain traction again because of a fatal incident, which is clearly avoidable had there been a neck guard? It would have mitigated the risk. But as I say, we've had the argument about helmets. Fans at the time in the 70s, the game's going soft. Then visors are brought in the night, the game's going soft. At the moment, there's a handful of players who play without a visor. Even players who play with visors, I can tell you now, they're not soft, players. These are hard men. I'll tell you now, having watched the amount of ice hockey I have, even players who wear full cages because they've got a broken face will still drop the gloves and want to spend 5 minutes in the penalty box for fighting. I will tell you now, being an ice hockey player, you're not a soft touch. You have to be so physically fit and basically take brutal hits. Now, the Elite League and the leagues below is a throwback to what the NHL was like in the 80s and 90s. It's a very rough and ready league. There is a fair bit of skill in there, but it's not at the same level of the NHL. Now, the game has evolved. But at some point, the NHL, as the big league, has to think, maybe we should make this mandatory. Player feedback is going to be vitally important, and player feedback not only to the league, but also to the players' associations in the various leagues where the players have unions, like the NHLPA, is going to be crucial as well, putting pressure on the league to make a rule change. And also with the manufacturers of the equipment, making it more comfortable and less distracting to wear, because there is that complaint that it is rather uncomfortable to wear this layer of protection around your neck and throat. It can annoy and distract. So player feedback is also going to be crucial in the design of the safety equipment. But I am a little bit surprised that we're having a bit of a two-way system here in the UK, where one league structure, which is the leagues below, are saying we're making it compulsory, and the top league in the country is saying it will be compulsory from next year. But maybe this is the turning point for all professional ice hockey leagues to go, we'll make this piece of equipment compulsory, potentially with grandfather rules like they did with helmets and visors, and we shall see what happens. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on where you think the sport should go and the changes the sport should make, or should it still be voluntary for players? And I'll have some more content for you very, very soon.